How are you, sir?
Hello.
What's going on? I'm just trying to get to work.
You were doing 96.
No, I wasn't. It was set at 85. I had my cruise control on.
You were doing 96.
That's ridiculous.
Step to the back of the car.
Why? This is ridiculous.
Ma'am, I need your license.
It's in the mail.
Step to the back of the car.
You can't do this. I didn't do anything.
Ma'am, you need to calm down. You're under arrest.
No, get off me. This is ridiculous.
Hands behind your back.
Like this don't usually fall apart all at once. They unravel slowly, shaped by choices made in real time. An instruction is given. A response follows. And each response pushes the situation in one direction or the other. In this case, the breakdown doesn't come from fear or confusion. It comes from refusal, quiet at first, then unmistakable. The woman in this footage isn't trying to understand what's being asked of her. She's trying to control the encounter, treating it like an argument she can win if she pushes hard enough. There's no attempt to calm things down, no effort to cooperate, just a steady rejection of authority, fueled by the belief that rules are flexible when you're confident enough to challenge them. As the body cam continues rolling, that mindset turns a situation that could have ended quickly into something far more serious. By the end of this video, she discovers a reality many people ignore. You don't get to debate your way out of lawful orders, and refusing to comply doesn't stop the process, it speeds it up straight toward arrest. The morning started like any other on Gandy Boulevard in Florida, but for Brenda Whitmore, things were about to change fast. A police officer was watching the traffic when Brenda's SUV flew past. The radar gun showed a shocking number, 96 miles per hour. In a zone where the limit is only 55 miles per hour, going that fast is not just a small mistake. It is a serious crime that can lead to an immediate arrest. When the officer pulled her over and asked what the rush was, Brenda didn't seem worried. She used a common trick called minimization. She told the officer she was just trying to get to work, as if being late made it okay to put everyone on the road in danger. Then she tried to negotiate the speed. She claimed her cruise control was set to 85 miles per hour, acting as if she couldn't possibly have been going 96. This was a bold but foolish move. By admitting she set her cruise control to 85, she was telling the officer out loud that she was intentionally breaking the law by 30 miles per hour. She thought she was defending herself, but she was actually proving that she didn't care about the speed limit at all. Brenda seemed to believe that her own schedule was more important than the safety rules everyone else has to follow. She sat in her car with a look of disbelief, clearly unaccustomed to being told no. She didn't realize that her attempt to argue about the numbers was the first step on a long road to a very bad day. After Brenda failed to talk her way out of the speeding charge, the officer asked for the one thing every driver must have: a license. Brenda didn't reach for her wallet. Instead, she dropped a major red flag. She told the officer she did not have her physical driver's license because it was in the mail. To replace it, she handed over a blue passport. While a passport is a strong way to prove who you are, it is not a permit to drive a car. In the state of Florida, you are required to have your actual license in your possession while behind the wheel. This moment, known as the passport pivot, changed the entire tone of the stop. Because Brenda didn't have the right paperwork, the officer had to start a secondary investigation. He took the passport back to his patrol car to run her name through the computer system. While he was away, Brenda stayed in her SUV, her frustration growing. She began to bring up stories about bad cops from her past, claiming she was out of sorts because of how she had been treated before. She was trying to shift the blame, making it seem like her bad attitude was the officer's fault. Inside the patrol car, the officer's computer screen flickered with the real truth. This wasn't just a case of a lost piece of plastic in the mail. The system showed that Brenda's license was actively suspended. She had failed to pay a traffic fine in a nearby county, and the law had officially pulled her right to drive weeks ago. Now, the legal snowball effect was in full motion. Brenda was no longer just a speeding driver. She was a person committing a criminal traffic offense. The officer now had the absolute power to arrest her on the spot and tow her SUV to an impound lot. However, he decided to stay calm and professional. He prepared to give her one last chance to go home, but he first needed her to step out of the car. Brenda sat in her seat, clutching her steering wheel, completely unaware that her simple passport pivot had just opened the door to a jail cell. The officer walked back to the SUV with a serious look on his face. He had the results from the computer, and the news was not good for Brenda. He told her clearly that her driver's license was suspended. Brenda immediately tried to argue, saying it wasn't true and that she was supposed to have 6 months to pay her old ticket. But the officer explained that the system works in real time. According to the official records, she was not allowed to be behind the wheel at all. This was the moment the traffic stop turned from a civil issue into a criminal one. Speeding is a ticket, but driving on a suspended license is a crime that can lead to jail. Brenda started to share her personal problems, telling the officer she had been going through a lot lately. She was trying to get him to feel sorry for her so he would let her go. This is a common move people make when they realize they are in big trouble. Even though Brenda was being difficult, the officer decided to be very patient. He explained that he didn't actually want to take her to jail. He offered her a notice to appear, which is also called an NTA. He told her that if she just signed the paperwork, she could leave as a passenger while her wife drove the car. It was a huge break. The NTA is basically a promise to go to court instead of going to the police station in handcuffs. The officer was offering her a path to go home, but Brenda was still focused on her own anger. She felt like she was being treated unfairly, and she didn't like being told what to do. The gift of freedom was right in front of her, but her pride was starting to get in the way. She didn't realize that the officer's kindness had a limit, and she was very close to reaching it. The officer reached a point where he needed to move the investigation along. He gave Brenda a simple command. "I need you to hop out of the vehicle and come around to the back of your trunk with me." This is a standard request during a high-speed stop involving a suspended license. It helps the officer stay safe by keeping the driver away from the steering wheel and moving traffic. But for Brenda, being told to leave her car felt like a personal attack. Instead of following the instruction, she stayed in her seat and began to challenge the officer's authority. "Why?" she asked over and over. She seemed to believe that she had a right to stay in her SUV unless the officer gave her a reason she liked. This is a common mistake many people make. Under the law, specifically a famous case called Pennsylvania versus Mims, a police officer has the right to order anyone out of a car during a lawful stop for safety reasons. The officer remained calm. He explained that he conducts paperwork at the back of the car for his own safety and convenience. Brenda wasn't listening. She told the officer she had never been asked to get out of her car before, as if her past experiences changed the rules for today. She even tried to argue that the whole situation was not that big of a deal. The officer pointed out the irony. He was the one trying to keep things simple, while she was the one making it a big deal by refusing to move. Eventually, the officer had to be very firm. He told her clearly that he was giving her a lawful order and she needed to step out immediately. Brenda finally exited the vehicle, but her posture was stiff and her face was full of anger. She walked to the back of the SUV, still convinced that she was the one in charge. She didn't realize that by fighting such a small request, she was proving to the officer that she was not going to be cooperative. The order to step out was a test of her respect for the law, and Brenda was failing it completely. Standing at the back of the SUV, Officer Torres remained professional despite Brenda's constant complaining. She held the paperwork that would decide exactly how Brenda's morning would end. The officer explained the situation one more time. Brenda was facing serious charges for driving 96 miles per hour and having a suspended license. Both of these are crimes that could lead to a physical arrest, a trip to jail, and her car being towed away. However, Officer Torres decided to offer her a way out. This way out was the notice to appear, or the NTA. The officer explained that this document was essentially a get-out-of-jail-free card. By signing the paper, Brenda would not be admitting she was guilty. Instead, she was simply promising that she would show up in court on the date listed on the ticket. It was a legal contract that allowed the officer to release her right there on the side of the road instead of taking her into custody. Brenda stood in the rain, looking at the pen and the paper as if they were insults. The officer was very clear about the deal. He told her that as long as her wife had a valid license, the wife could drive the car home. Brenda would just be a passenger, and she would be free to go about her day. It was an incredibly kind offer, especially since Brenda had been so difficult from the very beginning. The officer was doing everything possible to avoid making a physical arrest. But Brenda's entitlement was making it hard for her to see the gift for what it was. To her, signing the paper felt like giving up or losing an argument. She didn't seem to care that the officer was trying to save her from a night in a cell. She kept focused on how much this was ruining her workout schedule and how she felt the officer was being mean to her. The NTA was a lifeline, but Brenda was holding the pen with a tight, angry grip. She was standing at a crossroads, and her next move with that pen would determine if she went home or went to jail. Brenda finally took the pen, but she didn't use it to write her name. Instead, she decided to turn the simple act of signing into a battle. Her anger had moved from her words to her hand. In an act of passive-aggressive defiance, she moved the pen across the paper in a messy, angry scribble that looked nothing like a name. She thought she was being clever. By ruining the paperwork, she felt she was taking back control from the officer. When Brenda handed the citations back, the officer looked at the messy marks and immediately saw the problem. He told her plainly, "That is not a signature." Brenda snapped back with a look of fake innocence. She argued that since the officer saw her put pen to paper, whatever she wrote had to be accepted as her legal signature. She even said that it didn't have to be legal to count. This was a strange and incorrect way to look at the law. Legally, a signature is meant to prove that you agree to what is written. By making a smudge on purpose, Brenda was showing that she had no respect for the court's process. Psychologically, this was Brenda's way of having a micro-rebellion. She felt powerless because she was caught speeding and had a suspended license. Since she couldn't stop the officer from giving her the tickets, she decided to sabotage the paperwork. It gave her a quick feeling of power, but it was a terrible legal mistake. The officer explained that he could not accept a scribble. He needed a real signature to release her on her own recognizance. Image showing a person using a pen to aggressively deface a piece of paper. The officer showed incredible patience. Instead of arresting her right then, he crumpled up the ruined papers and went back to his car to print a brand new set. He was giving her a do-over, but it came with a very serious warning. He told her that if she did not sign correctly this time, he would be forced to make a physical arrest. Brenda stood by the trunk, still wearing a smug look, not realizing that she was using her pen to sign her own way into a jail cell. She was waging war with a piece of paper, but the legal system is a machine that doesn't care about petty games. The officer returned from his patrol car with a fresh set of papers and a very serious tone. This was the ultimatum phase. The officer had tried to be nice, and he had even given Brenda a second chance after she ruined the first ticket. He looked her in the eye and laid out the facts one last time. He told her clearly that if she did not sign the citations with her real signature, he would have no choice but to take her to jail. This was a simple if-then situation. If she signed properly, she could walk away and go home with her wife. If she scribbled again, she would be put in handcuffs and her car would be towed. Most people would see that this is a very easy choice to make. No one wants to go to jail over a signature. But Brenda's ego was now completely in charge. She was so focused on winning the argument that she couldn't see the danger she was in. The officer explained again that signing the paper was not an admission of guilt. It didn't mean she was saying, "I am a criminal." It only meant she was saying, "I promise to go to court." He even told her that he really didn't want to arrest her. He was doing everything he could to help her avoid the worst outcome. He was offering her the path of least resistance, but Brenda stood her ground with her arms crossed, looking at the officer with total disrespect. The air was heavy with tension. The officer handed her the pen one last time. He was waiting for her to make a rational decision. But Brenda was trapped in a sunk-cost mindset. She had already acted tough for so long that she felt like she couldn't back down now. To sign correctly would be like admitting the officer was right, and her pride wouldn't let her do that. She took the pen, but instead of writing her name, she prepared to make another mess. She was choosing a jail cell over a signature, all because she wanted to have the last word. Brenda now faced a final choice. The officer had been very clear. A real signature meant going home, while another scribble meant going to jail. Any rational person would have put their pride aside and signed the paper. But Brenda was stuck in what experts call sunk cost defiance. Because she had already argued for so long and acted so tough, she felt like she couldn't give up now. In her mind, signing the paper correctly would be like losing a giant battle. She took the pen for the second time. Instead of fixing her mistake, she doubled down. She moved her hand with a quick, angry motion and produced another messy scribble. It was her way of saying that she did not respect the officer's orders or the law. She actually asked the officer, "Do you want to see my actual signature?" Even though she had just refused to provide it. She was playing a game of chicken with a police officer, believing that her status or her attitude would eventually make him back down. This was the peak of Brenda's self-sabotage. She had a winning lottery ticket in her hand, a chance to walk away from 2 serious crimes, and she decided to tear it up. Psychologically, she was so committed to being right that she was willing to risk her freedom to prove a point. She didn't believe the officer would actually follow through with his threat. She thought the rules were flexible and that she could negotiate her way out of any consequence. The officer looked at the paper and saw that Brenda had ignored his final warning. At this point, his patience had run out. He had done everything he could to help her, but Brenda had refused every single lifeline. The binary system of police work was about to take over. When a person refuses to sign a notice to appear, the officer has no legal way to let them go. The choice was no longer in the officer's hands. It was decided by Brenda's own stubbornness. She stood there, still looking smug and entitled, completely unaware that the very next sound she would hear was the clicking of metal. The officer's patience finally hit its limit. Brenda's smug look vanished instantly as the officer said, "All right, go ahead and turn around." Before she could process what was happening, her wrists were pulled behind her back. The sharp, metallic click of handcuffs echoed in the rainy air. This was the reality shock. Until the cold metal touched her skin, Brenda thought this was all just a theoretical debate. She truly believed her expensive tracksuit and loud voice would protect her from real consequences. The Brenda facade shattered into a million pieces. The woman who had been acting tough and aggressive just seconds ago was now screaming in a high-pitched, panicked voice. She started crying and begging, calling out, "Please, please, baby," to her wife in the SUV. She even tried to claim, "I did it. I signed it." But it was far too late. The officer called for a cage cruiser, a special police vehicle with a metal partition in the back, specifically because Brenda was being so uncooperative. As Brenda was led to the back of the patrol car, the tragic irony of her situation became clear. She kept crying about how all she wanted to do was go work out this morning. She had traded her morning gym session and her luxury SUV for a small, hard plastic seat in a police car. Because she couldn't subordinate her ego to the law, she was now being processed like any other criminal. The officer explained to her wife that he tried to let her go, but her refusal to sign the paperwork made a physical arrest the only option left. This story is a powerful lesson in why it is important to pick your battles. The side of a busy highway is never the right place to argue about legal definitions or signatures. Brenda had a chance to go home, but she chose to fight a machine that is designed to win every time. By the time the sun fully rose, Brenda wasn't at the gym or at work. She was sitting in a jail cell, waiting for a judge to see her mugshot. She had traded a simple signature for a permanent criminal record, proving that the pen is only mightier than the sword if you are smart enough to use it correctly.